Welcome back to the Canton Chronicles, where the legal gymnastics are more exhausting than a cardio session on a heavy bag. We kicked things off with a little pre-game drama, as Yannetti tried to convince Judge Cannoni that he wasn't the big bad wolf responsible for Allie McCabe's tears, practically begging to scrub the pity party from the jury's collective memory. While the lawyers bickered over who exactly opened the harassment door, the tension in the room was thick enough to require a snowblower. Grab your crystal light and settle in, because we're moving from Colin's cinematic threats to the suburban bliss of the McCabe household, and the forecast calls for a 100% chance of high-stakes deflection, and binders upon binders of family secrets. Welcome in, everybody. Before we get started, please like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. You know, all the YouTubey things. Forget what you think you know about justice. Welcome to the Virtual Juror, where snark is reality, but evidence is royalty. Where at first we look at the FACS, or Facts and Conjecture Shared, before we get into the real stuff. Before the jury could even settle in to watch more of Colin Albert's selective memory tour, Yannetti decided to have a little pre-game chat with Judge Cannoni. He was still fuming over yesterday's Tears and Trolls redirect, and he wanted the record to reflect that he is not responsible for Allie McCabe's emotional breakdown. Yannetti didn't just want to object. He wanted the entire harassment saga scrubbed from the jury's brains, like a deleted text message. Yannetti argued that asking a witness when they talked to the police is basic lawyering 101. He insisted he didn't even approach the door, let alone open it. In his view, he was talking about an elimination investigation, and Lally turned it into a pity party for the McAlberts. He accused Lally of waiting for a moment where a witness could crack on the stand to bait the jury into feeling bad for the family. To Yannetti, this wasn't evidence. It was a performance designed to distract from the 12-mile GPS mystery. Lally, of course, saw things differently. He basically told the court that Yannetti's implying was loud enough to trigger a security alarm. Lally argued that by hammering on why the texts weren't turned over for 18 months, Yannetti was practically begging for an explanation. And in Canton, the only explanation for anything suspicious is the bloggers made me do it. Lally even took a swipe at the defense team themselves, suggesting they're part of the harassment that forced this family to suddenly find their alibi screenshots a year and a half late. Judge Cannoni was not in the mood for her view of Yannetti's revisionist history of yesterday's cross-examination. She didn't just deny the motion. She told Yannetti she disagreed with him in the strongest way possible. That's judge speak for I saw what you did and you're lucky I didn't give Lally 10 more minutes. In the end, the harassment testimony stays. The jury gets to keep their memories of Allie's tears, and Yannetti has to go back to the podium and pretend he didn't just get shut down in the principal's office. The defense tried to put the harassment genie back in the bottle, but the judge just shoved the cork in Yannetti's hand and told him to get back to work. Now, the jury is being brought in, and Alan Jackson is about to start his cross-examination of Colin Albert. Yannetti is annoyed. Lally is smug. And the judge is ready for the jurors to hear about something, anything, other than how much the witnesses hate the internet. If you are looking for a course in the selective memory defense, Colin Albert just gave a performance for the ages. And as a reminder, he's Commonwealth Witness 37. Alan Jackson, with the patience of a man trying to explain a smartphone to a houseplant, spent the morning trying to figure out how a 20-year-old can remember a timestamp from 2022, but can't remember a meeting from 30 days ago. Jackson started with a simple question. Who did you talk to before today? Colin's first lie? He initially said no one, except his lawyer. But within 3 minutes, Jackson dragged out the fact that Colin actually spent 20 minutes at the DA's office a month ago, getting prepped, by Lally and a state police sergeant. In the most unbelievable claim so far in the trial, Colin insisted that his mother, Julie, and his father, Chris, came home from testifying in a high-profile elimination trial and said absolutely nothing. No, how was your day? No, the lawyer was mean. Just pure suburban silence. The I don't remember count reached atmospheric levels as the 20-year-old showed the recall of someone with early onset Alzheimer's, which we don't wish on anyone. Colin's memory is apparently a very specific tool that only works on things that help the prosecution. He remembers leaving 34 Fairview exactly at 12:10 a.m. Did Lally show him the texts in the meeting a month ago? I don't remember. When was the last time he spoke to his best friend, Lally McCabe? I don't remember. A week? A month? A year? I don't remember. Jackson finally asked, "Were you told, if you start getting stumped or nervous, just to say I don't remember?" Colin said no. Apparently, he's just naturally gifted at forgetting everything inconvenient. Jackson tried to pin Colin down on his awareness of the case. Colin claims he has no social media, watches no news, local or national, and reads no blogs. He knows zero about the media coverage of the trial he is currently a star witness in. Ironically, he did admit he started thinking about the case only when people started writing about me on the internet. So he doesn't read the blogs, but he knows exactly what the blogs are saying about him. That's rich. Jackson pivoted to the Proctor family, trying to weave a web of Canton connections. Colin admitted his Aunt Jillian is friendly with Courtney Proctor, sister of lead investigator Michael Proctor. Jackson produced a wedding photo, Exhibit DD, to prove just how friendly these families really are. Lally jumped to object faster than a Bud Light disappears at a Fairview party, leading to yet another sidebar. Jackson is painting Colin as a coached witness, whose memory is actually just a script, but showing that Colin doesn't recall meetings from last month or conversations with his own parents. Jackson is setting the stage to ask, if you can't remember what you said to the DA 4 weeks ago, why should we believe you remember the exact minute you left a house 2 years ago? Alan Jackson tried to drop a photographic nuke on the stand, but Judge Cannoni decided to treat it like a damp firecracker in Sidebar 108. We've officially reached the "it depends on what your definition of close is" portion of the trial. Alan presented Exhibit DD, a wedding photo from roughly 2012. A pint-sized Colin Albert standing next to a bride, with a younger Michael Proctor. The lead investigator who eventually decided Colin was not a suspect, chilling on the far left. This isn't a cute vintage photo. It's proof that the impartial investigator and the witness have been sharing cake and family milestones for over a decade. Alan wants the jury to see that Proctor didn't investigate Colin because they're practically family. Lally's objection was peak Lally. It was a long time ago, and who cares anyway? Lally claimed a photo from 2012 is irrelevant and too old. He even tried to argue that knowing a trooper doesn't make a witness biased. In Lally's world, you can grow up with a guy leading your elimination investigation and still be treated like a total stranger in the interrogation room. Judge Cannoni wasn't ready to let the jury see the family ties portrait just yet. She called the photo cumulative, meaning she thinks Colin already admitted they were close. In a classic judicial move, she told Jackson, "You are a skilled trial lawyer. You know how to get this in," without describing the picture. This is the first time we know of so far that Cannoni has commented on AJ's skills as a lawyer, but it won't be the last, and we're just talking about today. That said, this is the ultimate "I'm not saying no, I'm just saying make it harder for yourself." She's making Jackson tap dance around the physical photo to prove the relationship, while Lally sighs with relief. Jackson is being forced to play a game of taboo, where the forbidden word this time is this specific photograph. He has to prove Colin and Proctor are BFFs using only his skills, while the photo stays face down on the desk. For now. Jackson took the judge's skilled trial lawyer challenge and ran with it, turning a simple wedding photo into a decade-long conspiracy of silence. If you thought the Proctor-Albert connection was just a Canton thing, think again. We've officially entered the matching tuxedos phase of this trial. Jackson managed to squeeze the juice out of the photo without technically describing it. Even though we all now have a vivid mental image of a miniature Colin in formal wear. Colin admitted he wasn't just at Courtney Proctor's wedding. He was the ring bearer. Colin tried to downplay it by saying, "When I was younger, correct." Jackson's snarky rebuttal was basically, "Well, obvious, Colin, you aren't currently a 6-year-old ring bearer." But you don't pick the kid down the street to carry your rings unless your families are practically sharing a toothbrush. Jackson established that the Proctors and the Alberts have been Tuxedo-Level close for at least 10 years. Then came the punchline. Who else was in that wedding party looking sharp in a tux? Michael Proctor, the very man who would later investigate the death of a man found on Colin's uncle's lawn. Jackson highlighted that while Colin was carrying the rings, Proctor was likely standing right there with him. It's hard to claim impartiality when you've been in a wedding party with the family of your main person of interest. Lally is popping up like a jack-in-the-box, objecting to literally everything, including the fact that people wear tuxedos to weddings. The judge started shutting Jackson down as soon as he got too specific about the photo's composition. Apparently, we can know that they were in the wedding together, but heaven forbid we talk about the entire wedding party or the fact that it was a group photo. Jackson, clearly frustrated that he can't just show the jury the literal picture of the fox guarding the henhouse, has called for yet another sidebar. He's successfully painted a picture of a family-first investigation. The jury now knows that when Michael Proctor looked at Colin Albert as a potential witness, he wasn't looking at a stranger. He was looking at the kid who carried his sister's wedding rings. Jackson wants to show the jury the depth of this familial bond. Lally wants to pretend it's a coincidence, and the judge is trying to keep the wedding album out of the record. Sidebar 109 was essentially a high-stakes wrestling match over a piece of glossy paper. Alan Jackson is trying to treat the jury to a visual feast of conflict of interest, while Judge Cannoni is keeping the menu strictly text-only for now. Jackson reached into his bag of legal metaphors and pulled out a classic. He basically told the judge, "Look, hearing about a relationship is boring. Seeing a tiny Colin Albert in a tuxedo next to a younger Michael Proctor is powerful." He's pushing for the visual proof, because it's much harder for a jury to ignore a family photo than a mumbled, "Yeah, we're friendly," from the witness stand. Jackson even dropped the term hornbook trial lawyering, which is fancy lawyer speak for "this is how it's done in the textbooks, Your Honor." He wants to show that the investigator and the witness were so comfortable with each other that the investigation was basically a family reunion. Lally continued to play the father of time card, acting as if 12 years is a millennium. He argued that being a ring bearer at age 8 doesn't mean you have a blood oath with the bride's brother 12 years later. He's trying to decouple the family relationship from the individual relationship, suggesting that Proctor and Colin are essentially strangers who just happened to share a photograph in 2012. Judge Cannoni remained remarkably unimpressed by Jackson's 1,000 words theory. She pointed out that Jackson hadn't yet established the ease or lack of thoroughness in the interview between Proctor and Colin. She basically is telling Jackson, "You're giving me the dessert before the main course, prove the investigation was a sham, and then maybe I'll let you show the wedding cake." She didn't kill the photo entirely. She just told him to develop it more. It's the judicial equivalent of "I'll think about it if you clean your room first." Jackson is being forced to do the heavy lifting with his own words before he can use his own toys. He has to prove that Proctor gave Colin a pass during the investigation to earn the right to show the photo that explains why. Alan Jackson just gave a seminar on how to turn a 10-minute chat into a 5-alarm conflict of interest fire. If you thought Colin Albert and Michael Proctor were just casual acquaintances, Jackson has now firmly established that they are head-table close. Jackson successfully navigated the judge's skilled lawyer maze by painting a picture of a relationship through Colin's own mouth. Colin admitted he wasn't just at Courtney Proctor's wedding. He sat at the head table. After a bit of poking, the judge allowed Colin to admit that being a ring bearer was a special honor. Colin admitted he knows where Michael Proctor lives and considers the families close. Jackson's subtext was loud and clear. You don't throw an elimination investigation at a kid who carried your sister's rings. Then came the actual investigation, which sounded less like a police interview and more like a quick catch-up at a coffee shop. John O'Keefe died in January 2022. Michael Proctor didn't get around to interviewing Colin until July 2023. That's 18 months later, but no big deal. Colin didn't remember how long they talked until Jackson shoved a transcript under his nose. The answer? 10 minutes. Jackson asked if Proctor was mean or hostile. Colin's response? Professional. Jackson translated that for the jury. He was nice, right? Friendly and cordial. It was comfortable? Colin's answer? Correct. The most damning part of the testimony was the thoroughness, or lack thereof, of the lead investigator. In a case where digital forensics are everything, Michael Proctor decided Colin's phone was a no-go zone. Trooper Clark was there, but Proctor, the family friend, led the talk. Proctor didn't seize the phone. He didn't look at text messages. He didn't ask for screenshots. He didn't even ask to scroll through the knockout videos the defense is so excited about. After 600 seconds of professional chatting at the DA's office, the family friend told the ring bearer he was free to go. Jackson has effectively argued that the investigation into Colin Albert was a sham, conducted by a man who was too biased to even ask for a password. While the prosecution wants you to think Proctor was being professional, Jackson has the jury wondering if they spent those 10 minutes reminiscing about the cake. We have officially reached a level of courtroom irony that deserves its own Netflix documentary. Alan Jackson is practically begging to show the jury the proof of the Canton connection, while Judge Cannoni is guarding the wedding photo like it's a state secret, which led to Sidebar 110. The judge's favorite word of the day is cumulative. She thinks that because Colin said he was the ring bearer and said he was close to the Proctors, the jury doesn't need to actually see the photo. In what world is a witness's verbal admission of a conflict of interest the same thing as a visual of the lead investigator and a key witness in matching tuxedos at a head table? By this logic, we don't need the autopsy photos because the medical examiner already told us what happened. It's a bold strategy to call the first piece of physical evidence on a topic cumulative before it even hits the easel. The judge tried to corner Jackson into admitting Colin is their third-party culprit, the person they think actually did it, as a condition for letting the photo in. He refused to be boxed in. He's playing the Bowden defense, the legal way of saying this investigation was so lazy and biased that it wouldn't have found a clue if it was taped to a bumper. Jackson pointed out the absurdity of the 10-minute chat 18 months after the fact. He argued the photo is the best evidence of why Michael Proctor didn't take Colin's phone or ask a single hard question. It's not about Colin being the killer yet. It's about the investigator being his babysitter. Lally stayed true to his brand, basically saying Colin doesn't pick the questions so the photo doesn't matter. Lally argued that since the other witnesses, family members and friends naturally, said Colin wasn't there when John arrived, there's no evidence of a third-party culprit. In Lally's world, an investigation is thorough, as long as you ask the suspect's family if they did it and they say no. Judge Cannoni ended the sidebar with a firm no, but left the door cracked open, like a suburban kitchen window. The photo stays as Exhibit DD for identification, the legal version of a timeout. She told Jackson he can renew the request if he ties it into a formal third-party culprit theory later. Jackson ended the huddle by reminding her that he's established a lack of investigative interest. It's hard to have investigative interest in the kid you remember as a toddler holding a velvet ring pillow. The jury now knows the wedding photo exists. They know the tuxedos happened, and they know that the head table was shared. but they aren't allowed to see it because the judge thinks their imagination is sufficient. Jackson is being forced to build a bridge of bias using only Colin's "I don't recalls" and 10-minute interview transcripts. If there were a Hall of Fame for convenient amnesia, Colin Albert just retired the jersey. Alan Jackson spent the afternoon trying to figure out how a 20-year-old, member of the most digitally connected generation in history, manages to have a phone that acts like a self-destructing mission from Mission Impossible. Jackson pulled up the text logs, Exhibit 81, and pointed out a glaring month-long crater in the data. There are 8 frantic texts about a ride on January 29th. Then, crickets. The very next text isn't until February 20th. Jackson asked the obvious. A man died on your uncle's lawn. You were there that night. And you didn't text your best friend, Lally McCabe, for a whole month? Colin's excuse? They just switched platforms. He suggested they move to other apps, like Snapchat. How convenient that they moved to the one app famous for deleting evidence automatically. When Jackson asked if he used the auto-delete function, Colin gave his catchphrase, "I don't remember." Apparently, Colin is the only Gen Zer on Earth who doesn't know how his own privacy settings work. Jackson then dismantled the evidence Colin actually did provide. Colin didn't give the police his phone. He didn't give them the raw data. He gave them screenshots. Jackson had to explain metadata to the witness, using the small words, date and time. He pointed out that a screenshot is just a picture. You can't see what's behind it. Colin claimed he volunteered to give his phone to Michael Proctor, but then admitted he didn't do it that day. Or any day. Ever. Proctor, the family friend, never asked for an extraction, never asked for an image, and never asked for a password. He just took the screenshots and said, "Thanks, ring bearer." In a truly bizarre twist, Jackson brought up Trooper Yuri Buchanan's attempt to get the texts in September 2023. According to the line of questioning, Colin told the police he didn't even have the screenshots anymore. He had sent them to his dad, Chris Albert, and the police would have to go ask him for them. Colin, predictably, did not remember, refusing to give a trooper a copy of his own texts. At this point, Colin's memory is less like a hard drive and more like an Etch-a-Sketch in a paint mixer. After establishing that Colin's digital footprint was scrubbed cleaner than a surgical suite, Jackson pivoted back to the physical. Yesterday, Lally showed a photo of Colin looking like a choir boy in February 2022. Jackson brought up February 26th, 2022, less than a month after John's death, and a little trip to a place called Fenway Johnny's. He produced 2 new exhibits, EE and FF, and handed them over. Lally, sensing a knockout coming, practically sprinted to the sidebar. Jackson has the jury wondering why a 20-year-old and his best friend suddenly went dark on SMS the second an elimination investigation started. By highlighting the screenshot-only evidence, Jackson is shouting to the jury, "This isn't an investigation, it's a curated scrapbooking project by the Albert family." Just when you thought the Albert family scrapbook couldn't get any more suspicious, Alan Jackson pulled a Polaroid from Fenway Johnny's that turned the choir boy defense into a Fight Club reality. Jackson went for the jugular during Sidebar 111, calling out the photo Lally used yesterday from February 11th as a total family job. Jackson basically said the prosecution's photo, the one where Colin looks like he's posing for a graduation card, was taken on a family phone and could have been edited, filtered, or timestamped by anyone with a thumb and a grudge. Jackson produced exhibits EE and FF. These photos weren't taken by Uncle Brian or Mom. They were taken by professional event staff at a bar on February 26th. No filters, no family interference, just raw, high-resolution evidence of some very unusual extremities. Jackson didn't mince words about what the photo shows. While Lally's photo showed nothing unusual, Jackson's photo shows Colin with white knuckles and significant injuries, suggestive of a physical altercation. Jackson is essentially saying, Lally opened the door to Colin's hands, so now the jury gets to see the hands that look like they've been hitting more than just the gem. Lally was not happy that his carefully curated peaceful Colin narrative was being punched in the face. Lally tried to claim the new photos were irrelevant because they were taken later in February. He also complained about hearsay on the social media labels. Jackson pointed out that Lally doesn't get to have his cake and eat it too. You can't show a photo from mid-February to prove Colin wasn't a fighter and then block a photo from late February that proved he might have been. Judge Cannoni, perhaps sensing that the cumulative excuse was wearing thin, decided to give Jackson some leeway, another one of her favorite words, which is judicial speak for, fine, you win this round. She's letting the photo in, but with a few strings attached. The Colin Albert 34 handle has to be redacted, because heaven forbid the jury knows Colin has a social media presence he previously denied. And the bar's logo stays for context. Jackson gets to show the jury that Johnny's photo to prove that while Colin says he's a lover, his knuckles suggest he's a fighter. Jackson just won a major skirmish. The jury is about to see a version of Colin Albert that doesn't involve matching tuxedos and I don't recall shrugs. They're about to see a kid with banged up hands less than a month after a man was found beaten and frozen on a lawn. Move over, Olympic athletes. Colin Albert has just described a physical feat so improbable it deserves its own physics textbook. Alan Jackson finally got Exhibit 85, the Fenway Johnny's photo, onto the big screen, and the jury got a front row seat to Colin's mangled right hand. Jackson didn't even have to point out the injuries. Colin looked at the photo and admitted his hand was cut up and his knuckles were injured. Then came the explanation that launched 1,000 skeptical memes. Colin claimed he was at a house party during his senior year. It was icy, and he was walking up a steep hill of a driveway. He slipped. But because he was holding something in his left hand, possibly his phone, possibly a beverage, he couldn't use both hands to break his fall. Instead of landing on his palms, like a normal human being, Colin claims he braced his entire body weight by slamming his right fist into the asphalt. Jackson's response was simple. Seriously? Which Lally objected to, but the point was made. Colin is asking the jury to believe he decided to punch the ground to save his drink. Jackson then moved into Colin's athletic history, trying to bridge the gap between I fell and I'm a fighter. Colin denied being a boxer. Jackson asked if he'd ever practiced. Colin admitted to hitting the bag for cardio. Jackson had to walk him through the logic that hitting a boxing bag is, in fact, boxing. Colin eventually conceded the point, but only after making it sound like he was just doing spicy Pilates. Colin insisted he has never, ever been in a fight in his entire life, other than with my brothers. Because in the Albert family, apparently fistfights with siblings are just quality time. Just as the jury was processing the image of Colin's battered knuckles, Jackson prepared to drop the hammer on his peaceful persona. Jackson started to ask about a video where Colin allegedly threatened to, well, we don't know yet. Lally practically teleported to the microphone to object before Jackson could finish the quote. Jackson has successfully replaced the image of ring-bearer Colin with scabby knuckle Colin. He's highlighted that Colin's only injuries from a terrible fall were perfectly placed across his punching knuckles, and that this accidental injury happened less than a month after a man was found with blunt force trauma. Buckle up, because the trial just pivoted from an elimination mystery to a high-stakes screening of Canton's most aggressive home videos. Alan Jackson is tired of playing nice. He's officially calling out the fraud being served to the jury. So we enter Sidebar 112. Jackson laid out the two videos he wants to play for the room. And no, they aren't TikTok dances. We have The Advantage Boys, featuring the charming Promise, I'll F You Up, and the aptly named KO Bang Bang. While the judge remembers them as just two drunken videos, Jackson insists they are the smoking guns of Colin's true nature. He's arguing that KO, knockout, and bang bang aren't exactly the innocent musings of a child. Lally is doing his best to convince everyone that threatening to beat people's asses is just part of the magic of high school sports. According to Lally, this is just a kid talking about a hockey team. He claims it's online social media fodder that has nothing to do with John O'Keefe. In Lally land, you can make videos promising violence, but unless you've got a notarized receipt from a specific fight, it's just character evidence, and therefore off limits. He wants to keep Colin's reputation as sanitized as a hospital floor. Jackson didn't hold back. He accused the Commonwealth of trying to present Colin as Eddie Haskell, a quintessential yes ma'am, no ma'am kid who hides a devious streak. Jackson argued that telling the jury Colin has never been in a fight while these videos exist is a fraud on the jury. When the judge bristled at the word fraud, Jackson clarified. He's not saying the court is fraudulent, but that the witness is lying through his teeth about his history of violence. Judge Cannoni has decided to go full movie critic mode. She's sending the jury on a long break while she watches the videos on the big screen. We're getting a trial within a trial. The judge will watch the videos. The lawyers will argue. And Colin will have to answer questions about his bang bang phase, without the jury present. Only then will she decide if the 12 angry men, and women, get to see the Knockout King in action. The judge is skeptical. Lally is desperate to keep the hockey kid mask on, and Jackson is ready to burn the whole peaceful ring bearer narrative to the ground. We're about to find out if KO Bang Bang is admissible evidence or just a drunken mistake. The jury was sent to their room, so the adults could watch Colin Albert's greatest hits. Literally. In this private screening, otherwise known as Voir 5, Alan Jackson attempted to peel back the Eddie Haskell mask to reveal the Knockout King underneath. It turns out that when Colin says bang bang, he doesn't mean he's starting a jazz band. Jackson grilled Colin on the Advantage Boys video, where a younger, seemingly less I don't recall prone Colin promised to F them up. Colin tried to soften the blow by saying he meant he would beat them up. Jackson, ever the stickler for accuracy, forced him to use the actual colorful language from the video. When asked if saying I will beat your ass constitutes a threat, Colin went into a philosophical tailspin. He wasn't sure if that was a threat, unless the person was standing right in front of him. Jackson's takeaway? If you shout a promise of violence from across the street, it's apparently just a loud weather report. Then came the second video, where Colin invites his rivals to pull up, bitch. Colin admitted that pull up means come over here so I can fight you and put you down. When the judge asked for a timeline, Colin suggested both videos, featuring different outfits, might have been filmed on the same night. His explanation? I change my shirt often. Jackson wasn't buying the frequent shirt changer alibi. It's more likely Colin just has a recurring hobby of filming digital fight invitations. Jackson then pivoted to a separate hearing in July 2023, where Colin again showed up with busted knuckles, just like the icy driveway of 2022. Colin had a fresh excuse for his 2023 injuries. The heavy bag. Jackson pointed out the mathematical improbability of Colin's workouts. Only his right hand, his haymaker hand, ever seems to get cut up. His left hand remains as pristine as his memory from the 12:10 a.m. Fairview exit. When asked if he throws his hardest punch with his right, Colin claimed his hands were equal. In this trial within a trial, Jackson has established a pattern. Colin makes videos threatening to knock people out, and Colin consistently has injuries to his right knuckles, whether he's sliding down driveways or hitting bags for cardio. His right fist is constantly in a state of repair. Since the jury is still out and we're officially in the voir dire twilight zone, Mr. Lally took the opportunity to perform some emergency reputation surgery on Colin before the judge makes her final ruling. If you listen to Lally's version, these weren't violent threats. They were just the digital equivalent of a playground spat over a sport Colin doesn't even play. Lally went straight for the he was just a baby angle. Colin was 16. a mere sophomore. Practically a toddler in a tuxedo. Lally made sure to point out this happened years before January 2022, because we all know people's personalities and hobbies, like cardio boxing, completely reset every 2 years, like a factory refreshed iPhone. We finally got a definition for the Advantage Boys, and it turns out they aren't a street gang. They're a hockey club. Colin doesn't play hockey. He doesn't know who these kids are. He doesn't even know what town they're from. According to Colin, these mystery hockey players were texting him and his friends mean names. So naturally, the only logical response for a well-adjusted 16-year-old is to film a video promising to F them up and telling them to pull up. No fights ever happened. No faces were ever met. It was all just high-stakes digital barking between a kid who doesn't skate and a team he doesn't know. Lally wrapped up by trying to build a bridge back to the actual case, which, lest we forget, involves a dead man on a lawn. Did Colin ever threaten John O'Keefe? Never. Did they have a bang-bang back and forth? Never. Lally wants the jury to believe that Colin only saves his knockout energy for anonymous hockey players, and that he was a perfectly peaceful neighbor to the man found dead on his uncle's lawn. Lally has successfully sanitized the videos without the jury ever seeing them. He's framed them as a harmless, two-sided teenage beef that never went physical. Colin is back to being the Eddie Haskell of Canton, a polite young man who only talks tough when he's provoked by out-of-towners. Just when Lally thought he'd successfully tucked Colin back into his 16-year-old hockey talk pajamas, Alan Jackson stepped up for one final poke at the timeline. We are still in the jury-free voir dire zone, and the math is starting to look as fuzzy as Colin's memory. Jackson pointed out a convenient little discrepancy in Colin's "I was just a child" defense. Today, Colin is pretty sure he was a 16-year-old sophomore in those videos. Jackson reminded him that under oath, in a different hearing, he said he was likely a junior or a senior. If Colin was a senior, that puts the KO Bang Bang era squarely in the 2021-2022 timeline, the exact same year John O'Keefe ended up in a snowbank. Suddenly, the ancient history defense is looking a lot like last Tuesday. True to form, Colin's response to being caught in a timeline flip-flop was his signature move. Maybe. I'm not sure exactly what I said. It's a strategy for sure. But to be unsure of what you said under oath previously. But hey, when your right knuckles are perpetually sliding down driveways, maybe the brain cells get a little rattled too. Jackson finally had enough of the "I don't knows" and asked the judge to excuse the witness so the lawyers could have a real conversation. Colin was ushered out, though the judge had to remind everyone to wait until he was actually behind closed doors before the real dirt started flying. Jackson is ready to argue that the Commonwealth is essentially gaslighting the court into thinking Colin was a harmless toddler when these videos were made, rather than a grown young man with a penchant for cardio boxing and digital threats. Jackson just tethered the knockout persona to the year of the crime. He's arguing that this wasn't some distant childhood phase. It was Colin's current vibe when John O'Keefe died. With the jury still safely tucked away, the gloves finally came off, and the argument began. Alan Jackson and Adam Lally spent the afternoon arguing over whether Colin Albert is a polite neighbor or a ticking time bomb, and whether the state police were too busy looking at wedding photos to notice the difference. Jackson didn't hold back, accusing the Commonwealth of performing a total sanitization of Colin's reputation. Jackson pointed out that Lally spent yesterday showing Colin with his arm draped over his aunt like a Hallmark card, specifically asking him to show his unusual hands to prove he wasn't a fighter. Jackson's logic is simple. If you testify under oath that you've never been in a fight and have no violent tendencies, but you have a video promising to KO Bang Bang people, you've officially opened the door, the windows, and the garage. The judge demanded to know why Colin's high school fight promos even mattered. Jackson hit her with the double whammy. The Bowden defense. The state police did zero due diligence. They didn't investigate the one guy in the house with a literal knockout brand. They didn't check his phone, and they didn't check his history. And third-party culprit. Jackson pointed out that John O'Keefe didn't look like he was tapped by a bumper. He looked like he'd been beaten to a pulp. If you have a victim with 2 black eyes and a fighter by nature in the house, it's not rank speculation. It's a lead. Lally's response was essentially a shrug wrapped in an objection. Lally argued there's no evidence of a fight because the people who were in the house said there wasn't one. It's the ultimate we investigated ourselves and found nothing wrong. He claimed showing the jury Colin's juvenile beefs would just divert their attention from the facts. Jackson's retort? I would agree it diverts their attention to someone who possibly could be involved who was not properly investigated. Jackson dropped a final heavy reminder. Colin Albert was intentionally hidden from law enforcement for the first several months of the investigation. No one even mentioned he was at the house until the defense started poking around. For a nothing-to-see-here witness, he sure was hard to find in early 2022. Jackson is arguing that the facts of John's injuries, the black eyes and lacerations, speak for themselves. They don't speak Lexus SUV. They speak physical altercation. He's betting that the jury will find it highly suspicious that the family's favorite ring bearer was kept in the shadows while his KO videos were circulating. Hold on to your seats, because Sidebar 113 just delivered the most shocking 180-degree turn since the invention of the steering wheel. After spending the better part of an hour insisting that Colin's knockout cinematic universe was just irrelevant teenage drama, Judge Cannoni suddenly decided to let the jury in on the secret. I guess watching the videos a couple of times was the magic charm. Separate and apart from the opening the door debate, the judge announced she's letting the videos in. One can only imagine what happened in that lobby. Maybe she realized that calling the video titled KO Bang Bang Juvenile Musings was a bit like calling a hurricane a breeze. Whatever the reason, Lally's sanitized Eddie Haskell narrative just hit a massive digital iceberg. The court reporter was kept busy as the defense's secret weapons were officially upgraded from stuff we're talking about to Exhibit 86 and Exhibit 87. Exhibit 86, the Advantage Boys video, the I'll F you up monologue. Exhibit 87, the KO Bang Bang video, the Pull Up Bitch invitation. Lally's objection was noted, which is the legal version of saying I really hate this but I can't stop it. The jury, who likely expected more testimony about driveway ice and 10-minute interviews, is about to get a front row seat to the real Colin Albert. No more imagination required. They get to see the demeanor, hear the voice, and witness the threats for themselves. Jackson just snatched video victory from the jaws of a cumulative defeat. He now has the ultimate weapon to impeach Colin's I've never been in a fight testimony. The sanitization project is officially dead, and the Knockout King is about to make his big screen debut, in front of the people whose opinion actually matters. The jury's back, and they just got their first look at the Advantage Boys cinematic universe. And it turns out Colin Albert's performance as the polite driveway slipping nephew was just a character study. Alan Jackson finally hit play on the digital evidence that the judge tried to hide, and the results were impactful. Jackson went straight for the calendar, catching Colin in a classic I was just a kid pivot. Colin now swears he was only 16 in these videos. Jackson reminded him that back in 2023 he told a different court it was likely his senior year. Senior year means 2021, 2022. The same year John O'Keefe died. Jackson's point? This isn't ancient history. This was Colin's vibe the same winter a man was found beaten on a lawn. If you think KO stands for knitting oranges, Colin is here to correct you. Under Jackson's relentless pressure, Colin finally ditched the it was just an insult act and admitted these were threats of physical violence. KO means knockout. Bang bang? Colin says it just flowed, but he admitted it was part of a promise to beat the heck out of someone. Jackson asked if he was planning to ball up your fists and beat the shit out of him. After an objection and a rephrase, Colin looked at the jury and said yes. So much for that never been in a fight testimony he gave 10 minutes earlier. Jackson then circled back to Colin's magnetic right knuckles. Not only did he have busted knuckles in 2022 from the icy driveway, but he showed up to his 2023 testimony with fresh scabs. Colin admitted his 2023 injuries came from a heavy bag. Jackson pointed out that hitting a heavy bag is in fact boxing. Colin tried to call it cardio, but Jackson wasn't having it. Colin claimed his hands were equal, leading up to Jackson's final snarky mic drop. So in your words, you could fuck somebody up with either hand, right? Jackson just burned the Eddie Haskell suit to the ground. The jury now sees a young man who records himself promising knockouts, admits to threatening people with his fists, and has a mysterious history of knuckle injuries that he blames on everything except a human face. Alan Jackson thought he had successfully nuked Colin's credibility with the Bang Bang tapes. Lally spotted a tiny crack in the door and decided to drive a truck labeled harassment right through it. Welcome to Sidebar 114, where a 10-minute interview is apparently less interesting than a 2-year internet grudge. Mr. Lally, clearly feeling the sting of the Knockout King reveal, grabbed onto Jackson's earlier questions about why Colin didn't talk to the police for 18 months. Lally argued that the reason Colin has been thinking about this case isn't because he's guilty, but because the big bad internet has been mean to him. He wanted to pivot from Colin is a fighter to Colin is a victim of online trolls. It's classic misdirection. Ignore the scabby knuckles, look at the mean Facebook comments. Jackson was, to put it mildly, not amused. He accused Lally of being desperate to get the H word into the trial. Jackson argued his questions were narrowly tailored to Colin's lack of cooperation with the law. He pointed out that if he asks what color is the sky, Lally will somehow claim the sky is blue because of harassment. AJ basically told the judge that the defense can't ask anything about the investigation without Lally pulling the harassment card out of his sleeve like a legal magician. Judge Cannoni, however, wasn't buying the "I was perfectly careful" routine. She noted that right at the start, Jackson asked Colin, "How long have you been thinking about this case?" Colin's answer, "Since people started writing about me on the internet," was the golden ticket Lally needed. This is the second instant when the judge made another comment to Jackson, stating, "You just have to be careful and skilled, counsel." When Jackson insisted he is careful and skilled, the judge hit him with the ultimate judicial "bless your heart." Translation? Ouch. The judge decided that because Jackson let the internet genie out of the bottle, Lally gets some headway. Lally is officially allowed to ask Colin about the what, when, and where of the online harassment. Jackson won the KO Bang Bang battle, but he might have lost the harassment skirmish. The jury is about to hear a lot about how Colin's life has been ruined by people on the web, which is exactly the sanitization Jackson was trying to avoid. Lally just performed a master class in Move Along, Nothing to See Here. In a whirlwind redirect, he attempted to scrub away the KO Bang Bang bloodstains and replace them with the image of a misunderstood teenage athlete who is basically just a victim of the internet. Lally hit the wedding photo one more time to make sure we all know Colin was a child when he shared a head table with Michael Proctor. He's the ring bearer with amnesia. Colin was 8 or 9. He has zero independent memory of the event. I guess being a ring bearer is like being in a witness protection program. You're there, but you don't know anyone. He's not really close with Michael Proctor. He just saw him 5 or 6 times at his grandma's house. You know, just your average, casual, my family friend is investigating my uncle's house dynamic. We finally got the why behind the Bang Bang videos. It wasn't about a violent propensity. It was about girls. A tale as old as time, huh? Some girls in Colin's friend group hung out with some hockey players from another town. The Canton boys got salty. According to Lally, this wasn't a threat of elimination. It was just teenage kids arguing about girls. In Lally's world, threatening to F someone up and KO them is just how Gen Z says, "I'm a bit jealous, old sport." Lally doubled down on the two-incident theory for Colin's perpetually busted knuckles. Incident A: slipped on ice in February 2022. Incident B: hit a heavy bag with no wraps in July 2023. Colin is an athlete. Athletes hit things. They fall. They certainly don't punch neighbors. Lally made sure to ask if Colin ever argued with John O'Keefe about girls. Spoiler, he didn't. This was the leeway the judge gave Lally at Sidebar, and he used every inch of it to show Colin as the internet victim. In his sob story, Colin expounded on the harassment his family has faced. People on Twitter and Instagram calling them eliminators, showing up at sports games, and taking pictures. This was designed to make the jury feel sorry for the kid they just saw threatening people on video. He's not a knockout king. He's a harassed young man who just wants to play sports and forget that he was at a house where a man died. Lally ended on the only note that matters for the prosecution. Did you see John O'Keefe that night? And his final denial, Colin responded, never. Colin has left the building. Lally successfully framed the violent videos as a one-time teenage jealousy phase, and the knuckle injuries as athletic accidents. He even managed to turn the defense's investigation into harassment. If you thought Colin Albert's heavy bag cardio was a stretch, wait until you hear from Uncle Matt. Commonwealth Witness 38, Matthew McCabe, is the IT guy who apparently spends his Friday nights dodging beer for a town-wide weight loss competition. Took the stand to give us the official version of how a night of basketball and bar hopping ended in a blizzard. Matt's night started exactly how you'd imagine a Canton dad's would. A quick stop at the Junction after work, followed by a girls' varsity basketball game where the home team sadly lost in overtime. Because he was in a diet competition with other people in town, Matt spent his night at the waterfall sipping vodka with water and a splash of Crystal Light. No beer for Matt. He's an athlete, remember? Or at least he's competing with them. While he couldn't say exactly how many Crystal Light specials he hammered back, maybe 3, maybe 5, he was very sure no one in his group was overly intoxicated. Just a table of responsible adults having a normal snowy evening. Matt spent a good chunk of time explaining his deep, neighborly roots with John O'Keefe. According to Matt, John was basically a third parent to the neighborhood kids, and Matt's wife, Jen, was the one John turned to for rides and advice. Matt recalls meeting Karen Reed in the summer of 2020 when John brought her over to use their pool. The connection? Both Karen and Jen suffer from MS, so John thought they could have some conversations about it. When Karen and John finally showed up at the waterfall around 11 p.m., Matt describes the scene as pure suburban bliss. No fighting, no arguing, just hugs, handshakes, and John being so excited about his niece getting into high school. Matt recalls Karen asking him how he and Jen managed to raise 4 girls and still look happy. Matt's witty response? Well, we're at a bar. As the band packed up their gear, the Canton crew started their staggered exit. Brian Albert, Brian Higgins, and Nicole Albert headed out first. Matt and his wife followed shortly after midnight. Despite the whole night supposedly being a celebration for Brian Albert Jr.'s birthday, the junior of the hour never even showed up to the bar. He stayed home with a few friends. The testimony took a dark turn as Matt described getting home around 2:15 a.m., chatting briefly about basketball tryouts and falling asleep. The peaceful night ended abruptly the next morning. Matt didn't wake up to an alarm or the smell of coffee. He woke up to screams in his bedroom. According to Matt, it was a night of Crystal Light, high school basketball talk, and neighborly love. He didn't see any injuries on John, didn't see any fights with Karen, and definitely didn't see anything suspicious. Just a group of law enforcement friends wrapping up a normal evening before a tragedy. As Matt McCabe was getting to the part where his peaceful suburban slumber was shattered by screams in the bedroom, the clock struck the legal version of happy hour. Welcome to Sidebar 115, where the only thing more urgent than an elimination trial is the desire to beat the rush hour traffic. Lally, apparently realizing he couldn't wrap up Matt's tragic morning in the 7 minutes remaining on the clock, decided to call it a day. Lally admitted it was selfish, but he wanted to leave the jury on the ultimate cliffhanger. Why rush through the discovery of a body when you can let everyone stew on it for 15 hours? Yannetti was shockingly chill about it. No objections, no drama. Just a shared mutual desire to stop talking and go home. The judge was briefly confused as to whether anyone would actually want to start a new, grueling chapter of testimony with only 7 minutes left in the day. A resounding no from both sides. Apparently, in the world of high-stakes litigation, 7 minutes is just enough time to check your email, and not enough time to find a victim in the snow. Before letting them go, the judge asked the golden question. Any surprises tomorrow? Yannetti said everything was fine. No more secret bang-bang videos, no more Eddie Haskell ambushes, just the promise of a very long, very cold morning after story from Matt. The court is officially in recess mode. Lally successfully ended the day on the word screams, ensuring that the jury goes home with that haunting image in their heads. It's a classic TV cliffhanger move. Tune in tomorrow to find out who was screaming and why Matt was the last person in Canton to wake up. And with that, the jury is released for the day, only for the attorneys to find themselves back at Sidebar once again. As the court prepared to adjourn, the lawyers huddled for one last chat in Sidebar 116 about the schedule. It turns out that even the judge has reached her limit on hearing who sat next to whom at the waterfall. This was the sidebar where get to the point became the theme of the day. David Yannetti, looking to avoid drowning in his own paperwork, checked in with Lally about the upcoming roster. Tomorrow is a heavy-hitter day. We finish Matt McCabe, then move on to the highly anticipated Jennifer McCabe, followed by Carrie Roberts, and potentially the Sullivan sisters. Yeah, that's not gonna happen. Yannetti just wanted to make sure he didn't bring the wrong 36 binders to court. In a trial where every text message is treated like the Dead Sea Scrolls, you really have to curate your luggage. Judge Cannoni took a moment to deliver a blunt review of Lally's directing style. She's officially bored of the repetitive nature of the setup. She essentially told Lally to stop asking every witness to list every person in the room, and where they were sitting. When Lally tried to explain that knowing where Matt was sitting was germane to his view of the street, the judge hit him with a "stop that." Her logic? The jury knows who was at the bar. They've heard it 40 times. If they don't know by now, a 41st seating chart isn't gonna help. Alan Jackson, ever the overachiever, wanted to know the witness list for next Tuesday, so he could use the afternoon wisely. The judge refused to force Lally to reveal his secrets that far in advance. If Lally wants to tell him, great. If not, Jackson will just have to spend his afternoon guessing which Albert family member is next in line. Lally agreed to talk about it offline, which is lawyer speak for "I'll tell you over a beer" or a very tense email. The judge is finally cracking the whip on the pacing. She wants less "where was the appetizer plate located" and more "what happened to the body." Lally has been warned to cut the fluff, and the defense is bracing for the Jennifer McCabe storm that is definitely brewing for tomorrow. Court is adjourned. The lawyers are heading out to organize their binders, and the judge is probably going home to a quiet room, where nobody mentions the Albert family. Are you ready for the next day's star-studded lineup of McCabes and Roberts? Or do you need a night off to recover from the seating chart fatigue? And so we wrap up day 13, with the judge finally playing bouncer to Lally's never-ending waterfall seating chart tour, essentially telling him the jury is full up on appetizers and ready for the main course. As Matt McCabe leaves us dangling on the edge of his bed, with the sounds of morning after screams echoing in the courtroom, the defense is busy hauling in literal truckloads of binders to prepare for the Jennifer McCabe stormfront. The Eddie Haskell mask has been slipped, the Bang Bang tapes have been played, and the prosecution is pivoting hard to the online trolls defense to cover for 18 months of investigative silence. Put your binders away and rest up, because tomorrow, the Canton crew returns to explain how a night of crystal light and neighborly hugs ended with a body in the snow and a neighborhood under siege by the internet. Well, that's all we have. So as always, love your family, love your pets, love your neighbors, and we'll see you next time.
Standing here in the shadows of doubt, wheels of fate turning, can't figure it out. Hands are heavy, hearts of stone. This weight I carry, can't do it alone. Eyes of the crowd burning through my skin, their whispers loud, where do I begin? One road to mercy, one road to pain. Every choice here leaves a blood stain. Bang, 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 bang. As the virtual juror, what do I choose? Every step forward, there's something to lose. Voices screaming, justice chains, rattling fate. What's the price for the call I make? Every heartbeat's a ticking bomb. The line between right and wrong is gone. Buried deep in the noise of the fight. Is there a way to make this right? Echoes of their pleas fill the air. Shattered dreams scattered everywhere. The gavel falls like thunder crashing. Can't stop the tide that keeps on smashing. As the virtual juror, what do I choose?